This is how my screen looks during our drawing classes. And we have here reference and I can control it. So again, you can see that photograph. Now in square format we see better. And we see glow, let's say, in this part. And it would be nice to learn how it looks here. We see glow here and would like to learn how to paint it. And it would be nice to see, and we see glow here, how to paint it as well. This part probably the easiest, even though it has the smallest amount of details. Easiest, I think, with the color application. But all science in this part. Okay, this part, or maybe like in this part, I would rather say. So why? Let me explain. Here's my drawing pad, and we have in this part, if we have, let's say, if this is our kind of area where we're going to draw, okay, we have here some reflection, and that's the reflection from trees on the island. Also here below that area we see a few values, and they have a special pattern because it's waves, and also it has some sort of, I would say, gradient, and also it has some sparkles of the sky, and then we have a large sparkle here. Let's work on this fragment, and it's not much different from what we've seen on that painting. The only difference, there is a piece of the boat is there getting reflected, and also lower side and sides of the like bottom and sides of mooring deck. But anyway, if I zoom in even stronger, you see here most essential things which you need to take care of. First, we need to realize that those like mid-tone values are there, like somewhere in a gray range, one of them lighter, one of them darker, and that the lighter one actually expands to longer longer height, I would say, if we talk about this vertical almost column of water which we're observing. And we will start first, when we paint, with working on it, and we'll apply our underpainting, and as you see on the bottom is going to be darker. I'm just trying to schematically show you things what we're doing. All right, then underpainting is usually loose, dries fast, and then on top of that we do those darker parts, and we apply them using our brush, whatever we like, and that's going to be darker, maybe 1 or 2 steps down in value. And it's really it doesn't really expand a lot, at least in this. On this reference image, I just have no time to explain you what exactly this is reflection on, and why it's darker, but just try to copy what I'm doing. And then you also can see that some lines are kind of like thinner and long, and I talk about exactly about these value ones, not darker ones, not the lighter ones, okay? But on the foreground, try to make them, try to create edges. So let's say edges which separate this part, and this part should be visible, okay? So you're using in the foreground a larger brush, in the background you go with a smaller brush. And then also we have here these dark lines. These are reflections from the trees, even though I would say probably they should not extend that far on calm weather. But then, because the weather is, we have wind, so we have them like down almost like to very, very low area. where they will be sitting on lighter part. Okay, they will not be sitting on darker parts here. So when you apply them, and you would apply them working over the that our first layer underpainting, and over underpainting is good to go again just to make it less transparent. And then you apply them, you need to learn what will be their pattern. But like in this part, they will be just kind of little streaks, and they will be different. One of them will be shorter, one of them will be longer. But closer to objects, what they are a reflection of, they will be bigger as we move here. And you know, there are some areas with less ripples, and we can see them kind of like significant. And then the many ripples, again, a lot of wind goes there, and it doesn't really give any chance for trees to get reflected. So you can go with a separate brush and create those lines. It's very nice when we have here, let's say, tree would be kind of like in this projection. Okay, I can probably move it down a little bit. And then we have all these guys just like up to here and nothing over this area because of and then where water is calmer, no less of the wind, you can have even stronger lines. Then we have a lot of glow over there. So it starts already feeling like water, and this sparkle is nothing more than just a reflection of the sky. They actually work pretty much the same way as reflection of these trees in water. All right, so when we create those sparkles, the only difference, we put some sort of for them smaller underpainting of warm darker color, and then on top of that we work with very light, almost white paint. So generally here, if we go back, like trying to create this effect, so let's say our major reflection sparkles will be here, but the most beautiful eyes on that painting, they were happening here. They are all separate, they have special pattern, and they also sit on the light part. And depending on how high is the sun, they can be on this ridge, but never on this side, never on this kind of the second value area. As trees on the ground, you need to find for them specific pattern and based on the wave distribution. I cannot make them light right now. That is why I'm doing some sort of this elliptical things, and then they become more and more active. It's more and more of them in some areas. Then it's again like pretty much often horizontally distributed. Then again there are less of them. I would say like in this area much less of these sparkles, and then a lot of sparkles here. Definitely will be some areas almost like linear when we have almost solid light lines, and then their edges again kind of gets invasion of from the gray, because we quite often wouldn't paint, we do underpainting, and on top of that we start painting with a heavier paint application. It'll be more one paint, more of another paint. So I kind of explained with the pencil what we do, and now let's try and switch to our real colors, and I'll show you how my classes look. And yep, just give me a second, and actually let's work and answer your questions. This is how my station looks like when we paint, so I can still work with my this side of the with my reference. I can zoom or move my picture. Quite often we learn how to paint different parts of our painting, and good to have not only reference, which is printed, but also a comparison what you have here on my canvas, and you see on your canvas, you see what's happening on palette and what you have as a reference. Quality of the video after recording is much better because you see stream, and sometimes frames could drop or whatever can happen. I have very little control over it, but I call constantly my internet provider just to make sure that all equipment works well. At the same time, we have recording in full HD, what's really you see and hear, and then after video, I post that video and it's available for my students to watch again. During this webinar, you will see what we have here until we have next webinar. We'll have next webinar, let's plan it, maybe next week. If everything's good, I have plenty of reference images. I have plenty of ideas to teach you, but I have not announced what exactly we'll be working on. So this is a week of launch and it needed a lot of preparation. So I hope next week will be not as busy as previous, like 4 weeks. Since actually I came from Wyoming, it's more than that. I try to work with the same palette. I will go over it, can explain things during my workshop, during my classes. Now we just don't have time, and again, it's not fair probably for those who are paying for study. And I'm glad that you still joined me because you can really test and see how things work. What you've seen on my previous free courses, it's just way behind now, and I'm removing them. I removed them today from Access because people may have a wrong impression was the quality of our classes, and I think this is after 2 years of engineering and planning and actually renting special studio for that, we can really enjoy much better environment and what you really observe on screen. But I will explain it that I have here medium, so I really use the yellow one. I like another thing to clean my brushes, but I'll use the Gamsol because it's more accessible for most of people. Gamsol or other type of OMS, odorless mineral spirit, for studios, which is still not, it's still considered to be dangerous. Just like without smell, it feels like it's benign. No, if you have fan and you can circulate in your studio as air and also have negative pressure, or at least doors open or windows, it's a good idea. As a healthcare provider, and now in past especially, I know about these things. I don't use gloves though. I apply usually liquid gloves, and they pretty well protect my hands, especially those crevices between the toes and skin. I mean the nails and skin. So I will explain during the class. So I use 2 sets of brushes. Okay, they are separate and they are for different parts of the painting. What I'm doing, I'm taking bristle brush now, larger size, and I'm working on 9 by 12, in fact 12 by 9 inches, my canvas, oil primed. So what we do, since our scene is relatively simple, I will do underpainting. I had a little bit different explanations for my students because we've been painting outside, and I tried to make it faster, but I think if we go, and they're also present, I'm sure some of them during this webinar, they will see kind of standard approach of painting it. So medium, I definitely need medium. I need white, and that will be my underpainting. For underpainting, we rarely put white, but since it's very opaque, we'll need one. So ultramarine blue, I usually explain what paints I use, but since design of this studio, this virtual studio which you have, is so convenient, quite often you don't need even explanations what I'm exactly using. I can actually show during the class if I'm cleaning my brush or switching to another brush. And also for my first layer, like all bristles, I will have them dark, and greenish. And when I'm painting with the softer brushes, I want them all to be reddish so you could really see. I just will need to say you what size of brush I'm using. So first layer, dry canvas. Let's get rid of it. During class, I'll also explain if what you see here on reference and what you see here on my color mix, why I do it one way or another. You can apply thicker, not thicker, but more intense color because to make it dry fast, you may need to remove excess of the paint to create gradient. And this is our, not sparkles, but the light is out of those surfaces which we observe on waves. Remember that drawing? Outside things dry very fast, so now I will try to wipe it off, and if it's, at least it's not white anymore, and still again work more on gradient. Outside sun and wind helped a lot. We don't have neither of them. Regular light doesn't give that enough energy to let it dry, because, and on screen which you see here, it's very, very light, and I will go with tiny bit darker mix, and it's grayish, and we'll add a small amount of alizarin. I'll create now over wet canvas still working on underpainting. Now once paint applied, let me get it to the texture, to what I want, not as of on a final painting, but to the texture what I want for underpainting. Variety of colors, even for underpainting, is a good idea. Surface seems to be wet. And it's really nice to let it dry a little bit. If you feel that your brush is, like if your bristle is not soft enough, you can take fan brush and make it smoother. Try not to make it absolutely smooth though. This is not my darker part. This is just my gradient. If you want to go vertically, that's fine. And I would leave it for some period of time to let it dry. Have something to show you while this is drying. I will try to engage you into my classes, because that's where exactly we can work together for a long period of time. And I can really explain within 3-hour sessions of work, live stream demos, much more value, and you'll have more time to practice and watch it for an entire year for most of the classes. Okay, let's stop here for a moment. I was waiting when it gets dry, and I thought if I use my favorite oil pastel, I can show you again that pattern which I drew when I have classes. All my drawings and all my intermediate stage photographs also gets provided, but here we just don't have that ability. You also need to find the sort of rhythm of all this water. So the waves have specific shape. When I paint, quite often use a marker, but for water, since it's gentle, or for clouds outline, I would probably not do that. What's good about the oil pastel, it's really almost kind of dissolves in medium rich or solvent rich areas. So this for us will give some sort of rhythm, and before it even gets totally dry, let me wipe what I have here. Just we'll limit it because we need some closer mixes. Outside 5-10 minutes and it's dry enough. Here I will take a smaller brush. I just want to show you a difference, and I'll go with number 4, and also, but I think we need to go with now after underpainting, especially not dry enough, it's gentle, it's a la Prima approach. I will go with a softer. I didn't paint this one to red, so but I'll have handles red for the softer bristles. This is number 4. What I will do, I need some amount, and I can use probably the my palette knife to mix it, because it's not going to be that loose. And I have options to add my Galkyd gel. And further I paint, I will add less and less medium. It will make my paint dry slow, but at the same time I want paint to be covering my canvas better, and each brush strokes becomes not much more challenging, but mistakes will be more costly. So I'm not going with the whole variety of colors, but you got idea, right? What I'm working on with, I mean, which paints I use to mix. This seems to be loose still. We can add a little bit of Galkyd gel. This is too much of a blue. If you look at the reference, it's a warm gray rather than. You can add small amount of the raw sienna here on one side. And we have to wipe our brush, so let's clean it. And since I want it thick, I'm not going as with watercolors on with the second layer. I will add small amount of white, because as I said, I want it to be opaque enough, not using much of transparency, something like in between. And now I'm working on that part which I showed on my reference as a reflection. Still feels dark. I'll try to stay focused with less commenting. During the class I have no chance to not talk, because I do quite often extra videos and extra commenting. Bigger brush would give me better flexibility. You also need to realize that we're working on pretty big surface for this small element. I'm doing it for you big, so you could see that it's manageable, and it may look scary until we start recognizing nice harmony of shapes and values. Trying to work with a larger brush on larger waves, not on ripples. There are few levels of the waves, I should say. There is larger waves. You can observe them, but they usually don't give separate reflection. You can see them on a calm day. That happens because the boat passed well, in a distance a while ago. There are bigger waves, and they also, smaller than the big ones. Could be bouncing waves, maybe, from those large ones. They kind of like okay, and very little ones, which happen with the wind, just right over the surface, not the big disturbance. You see, I'm still working with the same mix. It looks darker and darker. We can have slightly smaller amount, adding more of a color. So nice if you can create all these brush strokes slightly different. Adding, if you have different color, let's say more of a raw sienna, add it here, then maybe here. Trying not to use much of the dry brush effect. Otherwise it will be more graphical painting. We'll go away from colors, and after it dries we may lose nice colors just because of the too much medium, too little of pigment. Also here you need to find spots how the smaller one go. You can take smaller brush and create smaller lines here. Sometimes like a movement like this helps. No, don't worry if you put too many of them, because we'll need to go over the light part again anyway. Making some edges harder. Some stuff is just very little. Some of these waves. Okay, let's stop for now. I don't know, can you see that or not, but exactly in that kind of this part, which is darker, there is more color variety rather than on the lighter part where we just have gradient. Okay, gradient exists there too, but since we have no interaction with other value there, we're trying to keep gradient consistent just with the lighter gray. But you can experiment. This is what I do when I really need to work quick. And when I have more time, of course, you work maybe with some fan brush and make some texture more pleasing. It's nothing wrong if it's softer, because that's water, but try not to kill that color variety which you have, and sometimes you just need to add it there, here and there. Quite often the color change happen right on the top, because the water, let's say when it's yellowish, it's not much of just reflection, it's a shadow part. You see against the light color of water itself. One or another way, or you still use that brush, and if not to make it too dark, you can add some. You see, with the difference of color, it really becomes more alive. I'm adding my Galkit gel because I really want this a layer to settle quick enough. Adding some green here and there. Try not to create these effects of the dry brush. No, it may work. I'm not saying that it's absolutely bad thing. I'm just saying that we should not really stay distracted by the way how it looks cool, because quite often after you start finishing painting, you'll realize that you need to get rid of them, because at that point they may look inappropriate. Let's make some greenish parts here. So it's almost like a dance with brushes. But you got idea, right? You got an idea how this thing works. And then you look at the reference, you may do some corrections. You try to cover a little bit more with this mix, because then you will go with the lighter one later. I will show you when. It's dark? No, it's not too bad. And after doing more of this and that pattern, you may want to switch to darker brush again. See, this is too little. You will feel it, how it goes. Bottom, it may feel that you want it dark. There are larger areas. And more visible color variation, I would say. All right, I think we're done with this part. What we're going to do next, let's clean this brush. I will take new brush, and we can go in fact with hard or soft. It shouldn't be very soft. I think this is way too soft. It's Evergreen by Rosemary, and this is pretty much the same soft. Maybe I can go with some synthetic, which is like bristle but not bristle. And what I'm going to do, I will show parts where I will have sparkles. Okay, I will mix cadmium orange with white. We'll add my medium. I want it to settle. And then now with almost dry brush, I will go over those parts where I want my sparkles to be. So I think I may want to have like this big one here. And another brush, actually, maybe we need to prepare the area. I'm constantly wiping my brush off and removing, again, if my paint is still wet here. Of course, when you're outside, this thing is constantly moving, but if you learn the pattern, or you will get at least some idea of nice solution, how you can paint it, what to create what you see, because you don't see this still picture. And here we have it darker and warmer compared to what we see on above. It does seems to be very clean, but while we paint, it all changes. All right. Let's continue. It's very important that we don't really use brush, which we use for kind of like light areas, clean areas, with other Doing then the same with the same brush, doing some blue, etc. But going up, we are going to use tiny bit cooler color. And again, if your canvas is still wet, you can use clean brush, which is stiff enough, and one with color. I would not really recommend to use a big amount of the solvent to dissolve, because otherwise it will keep everything wet for quite a while. But if you feel that you need, you can do it. Again, you tried on drawing. That's I really often tell you, try on your sketch, your drawing, how design will work. You cannot just copy things, every little thing. And for this purpose, working on practicing doing sparkles from a photograph really can help you to learn how to deal with that thing outdoors. So that's your kind of homework before you go outdoors. Here you'll have plenty of them. I'd say that's the very intense one. So now I can try to go, if possible, without much of movement if you can. This is not your last approach with these warm colors for the glow. And also, when you work on white canvas, you really cannot say will you be able to achieve that clean nice white. And you can achieve that, I can tell you, with thicker paint application. If you add white, try to use medium as well. If you feel that this layer will make, I mean, if you really wish it to settle, and I really wish it settles quick enough, I still would not switch to acrylics though. I like how oil feels. I think acrylic dry too fast, even though we can get some sort of retarders. So with underpainting, we usually don't go crazily with the different colors. With main layer, we try to achieve that color variety. Squint, step back. It really can help you to see where you need to apply those sparkles. Trying to draw them, trying to understand their pattern and design, that really can improve your painting. So now you see the sparkles are not that light, and you see that after our underpainting, after applying this darker part, looks very light. So what we do, we take one of our brushes which we used before, I guess cleaning maintenance required. Again, small amount of medium, maybe not that much. And this actually could be a big help as well. When we paint outside, we really are in a rush quite often. We're working and creating now paint for this part, the light parts. Okay, generally we work like in 2 layers, but some more complex areas, when we paint trees, when we paint water, it easily can be like 5 layers, but this is considered to be second layer, which can consist of 3 ways of going over it. Don't make water just blue. First create variety, second it's never clean blue, even like on sunny day. When you do this light part, let's try and check it first. Yeah, this seems to be now too blue. Let's add, water is a tiny bit greenish. We can use even raw ochre, yellow ochre. with raw sienna and yellow ochre. And now we can do things. And now you need to be more careful. For this part, even probably good if you work with a smaller brush, if you have time doing so. Gradient, which we applied first as underpainting, really helps us to see where we need which value, if we change values, or need to be in this area. It's so easy to get lost among so many things you need to keep in mind. Towards horizon, sky, reflection can get lighter and bluer, but that's not always the case. It depends what do you have on sky, what you try to show as a reflection. It could be a warm cloud, it could be a yellowish cloud there next to the sun, and things will change. We just add medium, not solvent. Now, since we have not white canvas, we can leave small amounts of our underpainting visible. Not a lot though. Small amounts really will work better. Now you start seeing that the sparkles, value-wise and temperature-wise, look much more distinctive. We start feeling that glow effect. And also those little spots which we left of underpainting, they are dry enough. So they can easily become parts where we can put extra sparkles if we have that call, that feeling that we wanted. Also, you see, because of gradient of initial underpainting, I go lighter, and it's nice when you have some correspondence. It's lighter here, should be lighter here too. Despite of any reflections, except of when you have, like, say, dark cloud, we are painting now here reflection of the sky. Maybe it's a good time now to switch to a smaller brush. And even go lighter. Looks like now this little too light, isn't it? This gray part, the lighter part of the gray is too light. We can help it slightly. And I would say here we need to go with a warmer color as well, because we have more transparency of water in this area. So we add more of, maybe not even orange, but almost brownish color. On top of that, we create extra ones. Of course, in different parts of the country, and depending on the lake or on which lake, you have a different effects on the water. Be darker, lighter. It's impossible also to paint sparkles without painting skies. It's a good time now to switch. I will take number 2, soft, or even smaller than that. I will take this round, which is sable, and we'll create some lines across dark parts. If I feel that they got too dense, trying not doing feathering, so brush strokes when we apply them. Should not go over around correcting shape. So now darker part in here, and some green, more and more, trying to achieve more and more color variety. Especially for green water, they start looking really nice. I would say if we talk about the one like wave here, top of it is lighter and more yellow when the water has any yellowish tinge, and the bottom quite often is dark, a little darker, but more bluish. It's cooler. So show some areas where you really see water transparency, and edge on top is usually harder, and the bottom is lighter. So it's lighter, softer, and cooler. Oh, I think I got too much of a solvent. So this part should be cooler and softer. Now we add smaller parts. As you see, I'm not really absolutely copying. And also to create a feeling of perspective, we show usually distance making, darker areas in the distance. Overall, lighter than on the foreground. Maybe some orange. I think we almost forgot about that orange color. Trying not to kill that bluish. Maybe it was too much, but why we should not really remove all of it. Let's create feeling and the vision of those little ripples if they come as close as where we work on them. Value if needed. It's good to have maybe on one side a darker, a good pile of dark paint. Few varieties, I guess they just get used so quickly. My demo part is so big, for this little piece, you're probably working on small piece, like maybe not bigger than 8 by 10. I work on 9 by 12. Softening that transition between the transparency and base. quite often we end up having a number of brushes in our hands. At this time, just try to put everything into one harmony. So this part is dark, has all type of, and when we're getting actually, yes, closer to the finished top layer, and definitely needs now think about how it should look at the end of the whole painting process. There's definitely some beauty of working alla prima, because with alla prima you have wet paint. With wet paint you really can soften edges easily, mixing or kind of like melting one color into another one. Okay, and taking a step back really helps a lot, again, to create a distance. If I want to create that feeling that that part is quite dark, you can choose direction which you want, like that's how, let's say, wind comes, and do this. If you feel that the wave is too thick, too tall, unnaturally, what you can do other waves accordingly, bigger, or if it would feel wrong, or like you stop for a second and think, if it would feel wrong, then you just make that wave smaller. You break it. Try to watch for values, because values give a lot of help, or actually can backfire. This so it looks like in my case I have some warm cloud close to horizon. I'm expanding a reflection of it. At the same time, we see so many things reflected at the same time, and we didn't paint those trees which also get reflected. I will show them to you in a second. And those clouds which we see above here quite often expand their reflection down to here. Looks like we started painting, thinking about the sparkles, but got interested in painting whole complexity of water. Also, when we kind of work on this and that part of our painting, we start feeling how it feels overall. The whole is it the surface get dry enough to work on top of it? Which parts? We kind of constantly explore it. I have a feeling that now paint is not that thin and not that loose, so I can start applying. And where I would start, I do not know how intensity of the white I'll be able to afford if I go from the bottom, so I'd rather start from the top. And on the top, not in this area, I think I would like to use almost like with no any solvent. I'll try to apply some sort of sparkles. Looks like too much of the yellow. I have in my brush both paints. To be brave enough to apply paint with short precise brush strokes, drawing and trying to understand where they're supposed to be really could be a big help. So draw them. Just try not to apply just white paint brush stroke. It's not really gives that feeling of light. Make it orangey yellowish, and then you can put right in the middle that tiny white spot like we have in our eyes when we paint portraits. I will go with less orange on top. At the same time, this is way too intense yellow. To kill it, I need to add complementary color, and that's actually blue and violet. I don't want to use the same brush. I'd rather use maybe my palette knife. In case I got a small amount of violet. And I would use even like different brush. Let's see. Is it too dark? Not too bad. Still quite intense white. Trying to go on edges, then create those little threads. And then I'm going with my main brush for sparkles. And it has a lot of yellow on top of it. So generally, I should probably wipe it off. Applying, if you can see, quite impasto, quite thick, a good amount of white, but I'm not covering entire surface. I really leave that blues because of underpainting which we had there. Why? Because it's really contrast of temperature, or the values, I mean of the colors, really gives a lot of feeling of the glow. Let me wipe my palette knife, and if you need somewhere to make it glow, I mean to make it look lighter, you can very kind of push, very light pressure apply. Could be quite tricky to do, and you can create, but try not to spread it, just touch the tops of it, and then you can start again creating and adding, like in between those parts, some yellow, and then right on the edge probably you need to add some yellow. Even if your colors are not brightest, not cleanest, you still get effect of glow. That really works. When surface is dry, I would go and I mean like next day or same day when it's getting more dry, and I really work with finer brush and adding some extra colors around. You put not with white but with yellowish, some dots here and there, because that's some bubbles on water. They really but not with pure yellow either. Some people make them softer, but I would rather do that on dry surface, adding some glow around them. And what we didn't work on in this part, try not to mix and mix and mix color. Leave those orange parts around. If the shape which you see doesn't seem to be natural, you can correct it. But try not to do it with the same brush. Take another brush. try not to drag your brush over the surface as well, because it's Alla Prima approach, and this is my different brush, which is not that clean. And quite often in this area we can add a different amount of red. Let's go with small amount of alizarin. I will answer your questions just in a moment. You see, it's quite important to understand the shape of waves. If you didn't get the good drawing of waves, it's really hard to make it believe that these are waves and these are sparkles on top of it. May create feeling of different type of turbulence. And why? It's hard to say. So drawing is very important. I quite often, again, looking from the distance, you see value-wise what you see on my reference. This is way too dark. But again, we're practicing. We're not trying to follow exactly, but over time, we will stay more focused and we'll get better shape of waves, values, distribution. But you got most importantly the principles. Okay, so again, I want to now make some of my waves not as big, not as wide, and not having as harsh edges like on this side. You know, kind of they get crossed this way. Let's go cross this way, cross this way. So this is too tall. Let's chop part of it, chop it off. And always try to look at your whole painting as a whole. Don't look at it just like a little area. We need to be able to switch quickly back and forth. Like if you're running somewhere and you're carrying something heavy, you need to watch under your feet. At the same time, you need to see your direction. Or when you're swimming, same thing. You need to, when you're swimming on your back, you want to swim fast and safe and in right direction. So upper edge is hard, lower edge is soft. A little odd shape of the wave here. This edge is soft, this edge is soft. And then you kind of see how things work together. Maybe again, you need to remove excess of paint here, excess of value here, add more of warm there. Maybe these edges now feel too sharp. Soften edges in the distance. And here, this part seems to be a little too dark, but it's still, they may feel a little bit dark at the same time. If I make it too light, I can really make a bigger issue. When it's too light, where it's supposed to be darker, correction could be a good idea, but you need to handle it with care, as they say. Yes, the shape of this glow is a little questionable. I like this shape, like T-bone. Especially since we have a lot of space around, we can really treat edges here with that almost reddish paint. I'm sure working on a larger painting, let's say creating this glow thing, first, it's a big amount to be covered with it. On the other hand, you can really learn more about, learn how you need to paint it, and then you will understand the core thing. You can look at the photographs with not trying to create just pattern, but really understand how each wave looks like. And even in this area, sometimes you get very kind of light sparkles. This will have different type of texture. So trying to get that white in small amounts only when it's surrounded by yellow or orange. And I think this area seems to be, this wave, something's wrong with that wave. Need to raise the value of it. This is not even enough. And make it warmer, because under that angle things should look warmer. Not much of a blue, but lighter. It's kind of here very warm, this warm area, but somewhere in the middle it's the whole variety of colors. If we still have that tree getting reflected in this part, as we can see here, we really could show on slope, on far slope of this wave, like where you have a lighter area, some lines, and there will be quite thin. You can grab smaller brush, you can do that. It actually works better when you work on it later. Let's say when its surface gets dry. Try not to go with crazily, like with a black color. Well, okay. But that actually adds a lot of life into painting as well. Kind of tells you about the surrounding. You see, it's very hard to apply paint. But on location of this reflection, you can mix us immediately feeling that that object which is getting reflected like far from us. Paint is too wet to create this effect, but when you're outside and you need to work on it, you're gonna do just closer to the object, you probably have, in most of the case, you have more and more kind of bigger those areas which represent reflection. And it's not going to be just one color. There are very rarely any object has just one color. One's shadow is warmer, could be or cooler. Sunlit area could be again warm and cool. So I would go more with the Viridian. And knowing how this reflection gets distributed really helps a lot to show better shape of waves, their size, their even the wind direction. And if we had here, as on that painting with the boats, the base of the dock, that probably could have a even more kind of a denser. Yeah, when the paint is settled, and again outside it settles much faster, you can really paint well over pretty thick paint. Alternate the larger brush strokes and smaller ones. feel that your paint gets scraped, just change angle of your brush. And if you feel that you put too much paint, again, you can really, after a little time, take that paint which represents your gray, the main gray, and then shape those brush strokes. Thin lines, thick lines. Fortunately, a format of our demo in webinar doesn't let me to wait when it gets dry, because we do things on the go. And during my classes, I have really more time to prepare, to go over it over and over. You should not really be afraid that you cannot paint over this. If you have pretty good load of paint and you know, I mean, you feel where you will apply your paint, you may really create very nice effects. All right, because I see this is a little bit too shorter brush strokes. If your brush is clean enough, we have the whole variety of mixes here. Yes, looks like it's very nice. I can really now, with thicker paint application, not to maybe create with this consistency of paint any thin lines, but thicker ones I think I can do. At this area, I think when I was talking, explaining things, I got maybe too much. So now I would like to break it. And also with working with grays around it, as I say, create kind of sharper edges of these shapes. Create the whole rhythm of water, creating those kind of check marks. I think this is way too far. You may want to get rid of it totally. You need to have a pretty good, not too thin paint, and transitioning from stage when you work very carefully with very thin paint application to like more vigorous and heavier load of paint on your brush, you will feel some sort of relief in some situations. In others, you may feel, oh, it's too early. It's too early. Why I did that? Why I switched? So with every element, it gets more and more complex, and you may want to make more and more often short breaks and see, do you need to do any corrections? Because in the beginning we can go like with a standard approach, making my edge a little bit. Yeah, this part looks like more as a like shadow part, which is not exactly as it's supposed to be. Some people make the whole underpainting for this object, let's say, as like up to here, and then they add more lines here, and then invade with the gray and breaking it from the bottom to the less and less and less. So I would really suggest you to simplify the way as you see things. Let's say here it's a little too complex, maybe having area like on this level and area on this level different, and then on this level. I think we could be okay without this part, especially because it's height. I'm talking about the reference. is so similar, like this part is similar to this part, they take the same space. I would rather shrink this part kind of to the smaller area. What is tricky, you need to create texture, plus you need to create environment for it, and also you need to make it still look flat. To solve part of these issues, I really highly recommend you that you draw. When you draw, you may really better understand shape of it. And this is what I teach during my classes. We do prep work. So now let's separate those reflection things and just a darker slope of these waves. Like these parts. What we look for is a harmony, and with advancement of our painting, we have advancement of our judgment. What we see, it's changes. Not constantly changes, but it's kind of progressing, maybe we can call it this way better. Yeah, let's convert part of them to these waves. I feel just very loose. I hope if you practice, you feel the same thing, and quite often. And now, if you have feeling that you would like to get some feedback, take a picture of your painting and post it in the comments area. See all these tiny, nice, cute effects happen mainly at the end when we shape those highlights, making them almost like triangular, like that. I think we need to finish this now. Because this work can take forever, and only in plein air that's really helps. It's really big help because of we don't have that much time there. Quite often we have to finish. That's it. Yeah. If you feel that you did some kind of like it's too much and something doesn't really work, you can take palette knife and scrape it off. Don't scrape it off to the bottom. So let it dry fast. Let it dry, and then get back to your painting like in maybe 30 minutes when you're in studio. When you're outside, again, it will dry faster. You'll be able to get back to your painting in a short period of time. So you see, these are not that intense, but they also represent some maybe warmer colors or halo around the sky, around the not the sky, around the sun. And also, since we have overall rhythm of those waves, you know where exactly you would put those sparkles. Just try not to put them like on absolutely even distance from each other. You can see here they're kind of like stars on the sky. Some of them are close, some of them are in distance. Some of them you can maybe put having like going almost with a dry brush, just barely touching. Again, looks like this is became like a, and definitely in some areas you see them just getting more and more because I think just special wave or area, just right angle of the wave and right angle of the for the sun, that incident angle, they call it in optics. And here on top you go with, again, with more impasto paint application. Good if you apply it on top of the area which is prepared. If you didn't, then you'll need to, after it gets dry, you'll need to apply some glow. The pink one, just don't make it look absolutely the same here and there. There, if you apply pink, it's lighter, maybe a cleaner color. Put more of white. On this stage of painting, we should not afraid of thick paint application. Don't get rid of blue totally. That will make your painting look not richer. Actually, it will look poorer. It will not increase the feeling of glow. It probably will decrease that feeling. Again, can work forever on these kind of things, and you know, sometimes you see those tiny lines and threads. It all comes from the drawing, how if you feel how things work, because they're tiny shadows, not the shadows, the almost like wrinkles. There are some waves. They're barely scannable with our eye because they constantly move. When you paint them in still image, which painting is, they help creating feeling of the water surface impacted by the wind. Oh, I wish I could spend more time, like another couple of hours. I could take like another canvas. Sometimes you like brighter areas. I think we have got a lot of stars, enough amount of stars here. I still have questions and things to evaluate. When I do class, after painting we do evaluation, and over the dry surface we can do some corrections. Let's stop here now and see what you've got on your in the part of questions, comments, and discussion.